Welcome back, everyone. And before we dive in today, I want to take a quick moment to share something close to my heart. I was recently asked by Kathleen Stanley at Webster Bank to get involved with the 35th annual Long Island Golf Classic at Old Westbury Golf Country Club. Now, if you know Kathleen, you know when she asks, you say yes. I didn't realize I was saying yes to being the chair of the event, but honestly, I would have said yes regardless to whatever this role was. This event supports the American Heart Association, which all of you know is very deeply important to me. Like so many others, I've seen the impact of heart disease can have on people we love. Supporting an organization that's fighting to improve and save lives through research, education, community outreach, it just means something. I'm honored to be part of it, and I hope you support this cause however you can. Now let's get to today's conversation. Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. Today's episode of Leading in the Digital Era. AI it's everywhere. It's in every headline, strategy deck, and most boardroom agendas we've seen this year. The question on everyone's top of mind is AI actually delivering real value in your organization? Or is it sitting in the realm of proof of concepts, pilots, or even worse, death by PowerPoint? Leaders are trying to separate the signal from noise, how we move beyond the hype and implement AI that drives outcome, not just experiments. Today, we'll address the practical real-world side of enterprise AI and how organizations achieve measurable impact. I'm Robert Field, and I've had the pleasure of hosting Leading the Digital Era series, where we're about to talk about what it takes to lead transformation digitally. My entire career has been dedicated to partnering with organizations to navigate technical shifts, and AI is one of the biggest to date. Today's conversation is special because we're joined by someone who literally wrote the book on this. Our featured guest today is a recent Amazon #1 bestselling author of the book AI Achieving Impact and the founder of CEO of Mission Labs AI, a company helping business thrive in the age of artificial intelligence. Welcome, John.
I'm looking forward to, I'm definitely looking forward to now golfing with you. I know I'll probably out, and based upon the people here, this should be our foursome. We'll figure that kind of out. So, yeah, no, thanks for introducing me. I think the overall exercise about, AI Achieving Impact, the book, and Mission Labs, it's really all about kind of helping executives, CIOs, CEOs, really roll out AI within their organizations at size and scale. I mean, the reality is we're going to spend about $3 trillion on AI in the next few years between now and 2027. So you better have an AI strategy for your company. And to be honest, I think as individuals, we need to be very AI literate. And so what the book is about is really kind of AI in a box. And so you talk to different kind of CIOs or business or technology leaders, they kind of have part of the equation, but they don't have the full end to end from like, okay, how do I think about prioritizing work? How do I think about the regulatory side and being responsible? And that's really what this is about. So thank you for having me on the call.
Well, John, I appreciate it. And this is not new to you. I mean, you come with 28 years of experience in financial services, running technology and operations, leadership roles at JP Morgan Chase, Deutsche Bank, Broadridge, the New York Stock Exchange, Guardian Life. You've been a chief transformation AI officer at Guardian Life, Fortune 250 company with over $800 billion in life insurance in force. You spent a decade at JP Morgan Chase. You're the CEO of a $15 billion, 5,500 person global technology program. You have an Amazon #1 bestseller book, which I might be the only one who haven't signed it yet. We have to talk about that, my friend. I mean, it is a super fast book to reach the Amazon #1 seller list. I'm lucky enough to read it before it hit that #1 selling book, so I have to test that's real easy to read. Talk to me about what the preface for writing the book was, and why you wrote the book, and what it means to everyone. What is an AI factory?
Yeah, so a couple of things. So I've been, now been doing this 28 years, and primarily financial service technology, kind of size and scale, which you alluded to. I mean, early on, I was pretty hands-on, actually doing all the coding, building fixed income trading systems, a place like Merrill Lynch. I then was lucky enough to really scale this at places like Deutsche Bank and JP. When you think about $15 trillion in spend, now I think they're spending about $17 trillion. You could build, 14, 15 Meadowlands a year with that kind of money. And we were doing some pretty cool stuff, from quantum computing to launching satellites to other kind of, to AI, definitely rolling it out at size and scale. So, and then now I've really been asked for the last few years to really help companies really leapfrog where they would be kind of without some assistance. And so the book was a lot around that. I would get calls all the time. People would ask me questions. And to be honest, you can kind of only spend so much time, in half an hour, even a day, kind of sharing some knowledge. I'm like, you know what? I had some time over the holidays. Why not just write some of this stuff down? And it kind of took on some legs of its own, and like really happy with the outcomes. Got some really great input from some other CIOs and CTOs, and prominent kind of consulting individuals like John Ratson, who wrote the forward from Accenture. So really excited. In terms of what an AI factory is, I think we got a slide. So I think there might be a slide to pull up. So this is kind of the pictorial of it, right? And we're not going to have time to go into it all in detail, but there's really 8 pieces. So when I talk about that kind of AI in a box and the end-to-end kind of view of things, there are these 8 building blocks. And so the first is really around, I call intake prioritization and value tracking. And so it's like, you're not really doing AI just for the sake of AI. You're doing it as part of a much bigger agenda. And so understanding like, what are the business drivers? What are we really trying to achieve as a company? Where are we trying to differentiate? And then having that flow to, okay, well, what's the work we should be doing is really important. Yeah, the capabilities and platforms. There are some new things that you need to build or add to your existing environment to allow people to build their own models and Gen AI models and potentially agentic AI models. And so how do you go about doing that? Obviously, this doesn't exist without data. It's been fantastic. This has been a great driver. Gen AI especially has been a great driver of forcing people to think about, do we have the right data foundation? Do we have data in a fair way or in a discoverable way that can be leveraged within any kind of consumer, whether it's business intelligence or analytics or really AI? The operating model and governance. So this is supposed to be kind of running throughout, this is not a one-time thing. This is now a part of an organization. And so what's interesting is there's a lot of companies where AI is just inherent in their DNA. You go to a Google, you go to an Amazon, even a Microsoft, they go build a solution, they kind of build it with AI, right? They don't always have these separate AI organizations, except maybe DeepMind and some stuff where they're doing some really deep stuff. Whereas a lot of these foundational organizations, I just came from Guardian Life, which is 165 years old. I came from JP, which I want to say is like 150 plus years old. So like, how do you incorporate that into an organization? Then you might need some different kind of governance, some structure around that. Security, legal, risk, and compliance. As part of that, these individuals and players and teams need to be part of the entire journey. Obviously, everybody's very worried about the implications of AI. We saw a lot of issues around things like misconfigurations, as an example, when we start to launch cloud. We're going to see similar stuff with AI. And then you have kind of both the offensive and defensive aspects of Gen AI for cyber, which is kind of a different topic. Digital ethics. Just because we can do something, should we do something? And how do you actually embed into AI, kind of human-centric AI? Like, what should we be doing as part of this? And then one of the big things, talent and culture. This is different than a lot of these other kind of changes, because this disruptor not only is affecting technology, but it's actually changing the way all of us do kind of work on a daily basis. And we're seeing that a lot in our day-to-day. I mean, AI is everywhere, from you log onto your phone with your face till you get recommendation from Netflix or Amazon. So it's everywhere. And last, I view this really as AI to me is somewhat of a change management problem, especially in its kind of macro level, versus a technology problem. Yeah, there's core technology underneath it. But like, so how do we actually communicate to different parts of the organization, to our clients, and then how do we actually take them on that journey with us? It's not something, even though we've been really excited about it the last couple of years, this is a 10, 20, 30-year journey and something that'll kind of continue on. So I could talk about this forever, Rob, but I know I'd love to hear from some of the other practitioners and kind of what their experience has been with this.
So just before we jump there, John, the change management part is huge, right? It's the people change and how we embrace this and the digital transformation component of what AI does to business. And this 8 core building blocks of AI was the mic drop moment for me. And I sent you texts and emails, but I called you on this one. It was amazing to me the way you put this together with these 8 core building blocks. But people are confused by AI, Gen AI, agentic AI, and what's important as practical use cases. I often say AI is applied imagination, but how should leaders think about practical use cases when it comes to AI?
Yeah. So listen, AI has been around since the 1950s. It's nothing new. Places I've been, they've been doing it for a long, long time. And I think like I said, it's inherent in a lot of things we do. From, I was driving around this morning using Waze. It's built into that. It's built into a lot of different stuff. I think the Gen AI stuff, really, which kind of culminated with the with the transformer models that came out of Google in 2017 and beyond, really changed the game, because they basically are really good at basically at the foundation, they're just trying to kind of pick what the next word is, kind of, from a linguistics perspective. But they're really good at, Gen AI is really good at four things, right? It's good at knowledge retrieval. So it's really great at things like that. It's good at content generation. So from a content generation perspective, that could be actually like marketing content. That could be content for like code generation, which really is a use case people are using it a lot for. It's also good at summarization. So for those of us who, it was Legal Week a couple weeks ago in New York. So to see people sit there and kind of go through briefs and do actual, the way they're leveraging it for like e-discovery within like thinking about what law applies to my case from a knowledge retrieval perspective, or summarizing these giant briefs very quickly, like really powerful stuff. And then lastly, like, definitely for automation of certain tasks, it's really powerful. So I see a lot of stuff that traditionally would have been kind of robotics or low code workflow are really now transitioning to some of these chatbots and stuff. So really powerful tools that you can do a lot with. But Gen AI definitely has a little bit of a different flavor than AI. And now we're going to start to see agentic AI, which is, I was thinking, that's maybe a little bit more of a forward, but I got to say it's coming fast, and I've been definitely seeing organizations start to implement that. So that's going to be an interesting kind of change in the paradigm about just how we interact with technology overall.
Yeah, I think agents are fast and furious, and we maybe we should bring some of our other guests to the show here and hear what they're doing. Some agents, and we did get a good comment about the importance of privacy here, which is important to worry about as well. But let's bring some of our guests to the show here also. Let's first start with Tom Tyrer. Tom, I messed it up. I'm sorry. Tom is a seasoned technology leader with 15 years of experience across McKinsey and MasterCard. While most recently, Thomas led the applied AI team at MasterCard, where he focused on delivering critical enterprise use cases and building the foundation platforms to scale AI across the organization. Before that, he was a partner at McKinsey in the New York office, helping bridge the gap between business and technology and AI. He led integration teams that built and scaled solutions, leveraging everything from advanced analytics and machine learning to graph technology, generative AI, and intelligent agents. Thomas held an MBA from Columbia and a master's from economics from Antwerp University, where he grew up, and now lives in New York City with his wife and their 2-year-old son. Thomas, tell me your last name again. Is it
Tyree
Tyree?
for the Americans. TA for those that speak some French, but please don't try and butcher that.
Well, many of us are from New York, and so there's a guy, David Tyree, who helped us win a Super Bowl. So it's very easy for us in New York.
Brilliant! I didn't know that. Awesome.
Anyway.
Awesome. Thank you, John and Thomas Tyree.
Huh.
And let's also bring to the stage here Mansi Kapati. Mansi is the global head of strategy and transformation at Lazard, where she leads AI-powered innovation across the firm's investment banking and asset management businesses. Her focus is on redefining the future of finance through cutting-edge technology and upskilling thousands of employees in a digital-first world. Before Lazard, Mansi spent 15 years advising CEOs and CIOs in management consulting, driving tech monetization, cloud strategy, and scalable transformation initiatives. She's passionate about building resilient, future-ready organizations and fostering bold cultural changes. Mansi also serves as an advisor to VC firms and a member of the T200 Network for Women Executives, is a sought-after speaker of AI, innovation, and transformation. Hi, Mansi.
Hi, Rob. Thanks for the kind introduction.
Well, thank you both for joining. And I know you guys, we talked a lot before this. I appreciate you both being here. But Thomas, if you don't mind, I know you recently left MasterCard to pursue your own entrepreneurial venture. And while you're in stealth mode, what can you share with us at this point about AI and what you have going on?
Yeah, no, happy to. So look, I left MasterCard because I think AI is such a transformational technology. I really think of it as like today's internet. So go back 30 or 40 years, and like when people started thinking and talking about the internet, and very few knew exactly what it was going to be today, right? So I don't know much yet, but or I'm not willing to share too much yet. Couple of things I do know. I'm now getting up at 5:30 in the morning, which I can tell you it has been quite a while since I got up at 5:30 in the morning because I was so excited to start work. Two, it'll likely be quite different from what I did at MasterCard. Obviously, size and scale wise, it's quite different, but also I'm pretty sure it's not going to be in the payments or fintech industry as much as that's what everybody is probably expecting me to do something in. I care a lot about working with people in person, and so we'll likely anchor the startup on the East Coast somewhere in New York or nearby. And then I'm sure this is to be expected, but we're going to try and build agents for a couple of subsectors of the economy, but I think rather than many who have built agents directly on top of these LLMs, differentiation we're going after is really, to John's point, around all the data that you need. And so we're really thinking through and working on what are the new next generation data models, what data today does not exist that you would need to make these agents far more successful in delivering their value. And so that are the 2 or 3 things I do know already. But other than that, very much working around the clock to get it out there.
All right, where can I invest?
Well,
We can take that off.
We're going to want to invest, I'm sure, in that. The quintessential cornerstone of AI, of course, is data, and the new data that's being created is going to be a real cornerstone of how that's important. But so while you're at MasterCard, we know that you spent 4 years implementing AI that works.
Yep.
The concept of an AI factory or something like it come into play while you were building AI at MasterCard?
Very much. Look, I think John said it before also, large companies, in particular those like MasterCard, but other tech firms as well, have quite the history of using AI. But I've always thought of it as 2 key components, and the Gen AI kind of like just made sure we needed to accelerate across both of these. Component 1 is like build the right use cases, make sure you get some early wins, make sure you get these use cases out there for people to see that it actually does something. Part 2 is that AI factory that John was talking about, because really, to get this to work at scale, at speed in a large organization, you need all these component parts to work relatively well together. And so that's when I was reading John's book or an early draft of it, I was like, hey, like I've been trying to set a framework for like how the whole of this AI plus Gen AI thing works. But John just wrote it down. So like, I think that is the way it works. Like, you just need to make sure like you have a simple framework that covers all the basics, and then you can move much faster and scale much more easily than you otherwise would.
Well, I appreciate you being a beta reader, by the way, and so that's your fingerprints are all throughout the book. So, but I get to take credit. But thank you.
Not that John's any good at taking credit and just makes him uncomfortable. But as you're reading the book and it's resonating with you, did you what the points that you learned from the book and you use them going forward in your new company? Is this a book that you're recommending going forward to everybody that you come in contact with?
Yeah, I think it very much is focused on those that are at large enterprises. Like, would I say everybody needs to read this book? Probably that's not a bad idea for book sales, but like for those that really need it are those that are in relatively like mid-sized to large organizations, and that like have a whole framework that they need to cover. You can't just say, hey, we're going to focus on this part or that part like you can in a startup or in a specific smaller situation. As a large responsible enterprise, and somebody talked about privacy and ethics and all of the things you need to get right, you need a good framework to get this stuff done well, because otherwise you quickly will learn that either you speed bump into the security folks, or you run into bumps with the data security guys or the data governance people. And like you want to make sure you cover all your bases. That's where I think the book's most valuable.
Beautiful. Thanks, Thomas. So, Mazzy, thank you for joining us today. Can you talk to me a little bit, and I've known you before our AI conversations for a long time and before John brought you to the show, but talk to me about what's your view on culture shifts needing to embrace AI in traditional organizations?
Absolutely, Rob. So, look, I often joke that implementing AI in a traditional organization is not like flipping a switch. It's like planning a group trip where half the team doesn't want to go, the other half packed for the wrong destination, and one person insists that we take a horse instead of a plane. So, what I'm trying to say is culture really is the hardest part. Resistance usually is not about the technology itself, but it's more about the fear, the fatigue, and the lack of trust in both the systems and the people implementing them. And in legacy environments, success doesn't start with better models. It really starts with empathy, storytelling, and treating change more like a community organizing than a tech rollout. Look, the goal at the end of the day is not to turn everyone into a prompt engineer, but it's to help people see AI as a tool that makes their work better today, not something that will replace them tomorrow. And that shift happens when AI is framed as empowerment, not just disruption. And to give you an example, like I think Netflix is a great example. Everyone talks about their recommendation engine, but the real driver of all of it was, of all of the success was really cultural, right? Like they normalized testing, they embraced failure, they created space for experimentation. That mindset allowed them to scale AI across content, marketing, and beyond. And also in my own work, leading AI transformations, I've seen the same pattern. The tech works. The real unlock is human readiness. And when you get that right, that's when the real transformation begins.
So the storytelling part resonates with me, especially when people are having trouble understanding the value of AI and what to use it for. And my definition of applied imagination is going to come real into play with that. I'd like to unpack a little bit about how you use storytelling in embracing AI and in the organization and getting your partners to use stories to not use prompt engineering and doing that. Can you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I think by the head of AI or the CIO telling people that they need to use AI, I don't think that resonates with everybody. But if you have champions or people in the firm that are already using it, people want to hear from their colleagues and they want to hear how their colleagues are using it. I think that really helps when they hear from people that are in the business, that are using it for different use cases that are impacting the business, and using AI to scale how they work.
So John Erickson's comment, actually, what you just said and John Erickson's comment, that makes that hard stuff easy when you bring that storytelling in. So thank you, John Erickson. And Michael Pompey, good point. You think AI will push companies to deal with the stickiness of the human component during transformation. You want to comment on Michael's comment, Nancy?
So, sorry, I cannot see his comment. So I'll
No, can you bring that back up, please? Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. I think it's really all about the human component at the end of the day. The tech is already there. People need to embrace it. And I think for now, people are using AI for the low value work. Eventually, as the tech gets better, the AI is going to take up some, more insightful tasks, and that's going to push people to do, to create those relationships and all of that, where they're not bogged down with doing the day-to-day mundane drudgery.
Thank you, Nancy. So while this statement's going to make John Napoli uncomfortable, I like to do that. As we're here to celebrate John's book launch, and how did you find John's book, Nancy, and what part really resonated with you?
Yeah, so look, I think John's book is one of those rare finds in the AI space that's both strategic and deeply practical, which, as we all know, is not an easy balance to strike. What resonated most with me was the concept of the AI factory that John spoke about. I think too many organizations treat AI like a one off science project, but this framework forces you to think holistically about data, talent, governance, ethics, change management. And I also think it's not about chasing the next best use case. It's really about building sustainable, repeatable capabilities. I also appreciated the whole AI steady versus AI accelerated framework. It gives leaders permission to move with intention. So you don't have to become a Silicon Valley moonshot overnight. The most powerful AI strategy is the one that fits your people, your culture, and where your organization actually is today. And what I love the most about this book is that it does not hype AI, it grounds it. And that's exactly the kind of clear eyed, actionable perspective that business leaders need right now. I also think the whole idea about intake prioritization and value tracking model is something that really clicked with me, because as someone who's led AI strategy across large organizations, I believe without structure, even the best ideas kind of go nowhere. And it's a perfect example how AI success is not about chasing ideas, but it's about choosing the right ones and proving that they actually work.
Thanks, Monty. So definitely, I'll send you your Venmo, after this. I appreciate it. And I think Tomas, by the way, is right. I think there's a sweet spot for like who should really be leveraging this. A lot of people could benefit from it, but it's really about rolling this out at size and scale. And the book's really about, and although my mother's reading it, and God bless her, like I don't know what she's going to get out of it, but she's not that technical, shockingly, 82-year-old. But what I would say, it's really about kind of slowing down to beat up, and so just being, to your point, Monsi, about being very specific and structured about what are you going after, why are you going after it, and then kind of doing it, not getting caught up in the, oh my God, I got to chase the shiny object today, because we all know in technology, I've been doing this a long time, there's always going to be a new one tomorrow.
So I'm gonna argue for a second with you guys, and Tim Ackerman from Polytainers and I had a conversation. Polytainers is a relatively small manufacturing company in the Midwest. He said, should I read John's book? Maybe they're $400 million, 200-person manufacturing company. I said, of course. The value I see in AI is around what you choose to do, and especially when you look at building agents for data and stuff like that. But I think anyone can use AI as long as you pick the right, as you guys just said, pick the right use case. So Tomas, I have a question for you, and John, you hit a really big touch point on your 8 pillars, and change management's a real big part of that. And again, this is the mic drop moment for me in your book. But Thomas, it's been said AI is more of change than management, than a technology problem. And during your time at MasterCard, you had to get tremendous buy-in for stuff, or at McKinsey. Where did you stumble during those times, especially in huge, big, it takes a lot to steer a battleship of companies of those size doing this. Can you talk about what happened there?
Happy to. The first thing I'd say is I'd reframe the question or the challenge a little bit differently. And I've always thought it was a little awkward where people were like, hey, how do I make AI a success? The question is, what success are we trying to achieve, and can AI help? And that is really like question number one on how you take all these humans, like Mansi was explaining in the analogy, like on the same journey and roughly in the same direction and roughly with the same century of technology being used, right? Because if the outcome is AI, I think you're missing the point of what we're trying to do. The outcome is, here's the value I'm trying to create. And the vast majority of cases where we stumbled were cases where somebody was like, hey, we need to use AI for this. And I'm very sorry, that's not a good reason. Like I saw engineering teams or data scientists build models that when you pick them apart, you could like just do this with a query, like a straight up query into a database. Fancy machine learning model takes a data run on fancy equipment, or it could also just be a query. Same is true for now the agents today, where like there's processes that just need to be redesigned, trying to like drive a bunch of AI through a very manual like workload and set of processes. It's going to be very hard. First, got to redesign the process, and then you can use AI. So where we struggled the most is where cart before horse, so to speak, is those places where we struggled the most, and then you need to like take take a step all the way back. Second place, I would say, was a lot with the data. Like data is just a very, very underestimated problem. And if you use LLMs out of the box, it's totally a solved problem for you as an organization. But once you start thinking through, hey, I want to add my own data, how good is that data? Because all these rack systems that were built over the last, 18 months, like I can tell you, the vast majority of them are just churning out the same low quality answers that you had when you started. They may go there a little faster than you pouring over many documents, but if the document doesn't have the right answer, you're not going to get there.
And so Tomas, so a couple things on there. So there's a reason like the first pillar is, or the first building block is intake prioritization and value tracking for everything you said, right? It's like, I love having a unified input process because to your point, we're trying to solve a problem. I don't know, AI might be part of the problem. It's usually not just like a model standing by itself. There's user interfaces, there's automation, there's data and other pieces to it. So being able to say, you know what, like why even bother? Like that might even just be a process change. You might not even need technology is really key. And then the data piece is, I think to your point, especially I love what you're doing with your company, it's going to be the big differentiator. So a lot of times we talk about what are we going to build ourselves versus what do we use a third party for? It's like, do they have access to either like SMEs or some special data that we would never be able to kind of gather? And that's why when you have companies like Bloomberg and others who are building their own LLMs, they have this special sauce because they have access to that data. So yes, just, your own general data, third party data. But if you think about like a JP Morgan Chase, where I came from, which had 500 petabytes of data, and I think had information on something like 50% of the households in the United States, I mean, that's a pretty compelling set of data that they can do some pretty cool kind of differentiating things with. So it's really important.
Yep.
I saw a question pop up. Rob, you're faster than me, so I assume you caught it. But
John, can you pop up the last question
or comment?
So while yeah, so I actually agree with that, and so that actually brings me to my next question, right? So, and the comfortability of AI, especially, and a lot of IT people are embracing it more than outside. And I had a conversation with a friend recently where people outside IT aren't feeling as comfortable with AI than they are within IT. But that brings me to a question I have for you, John, and I'd like everyone to weigh in on this. But let's talk about culture and talent within AI. And John, if you could start there, and where do you see the talent gap and where people are embracing talent when it comes to AI?
Yeah, this is one of those unique ones where, as we talked about cloud a little bit earlier on, where it was really just like, okay, you had all these engineers who didn't know how to be cloud native, and now they just do. Kind of like, eventually we'll all be with AI. It's just kind of inherent. But this one is really about, changing the way we do things and throughout the business and everything. And so, but if I think about, I've some of you might have heard this before, but when you think about the rollout of things like electricity or the steam engine, I mean, it took 20, 30 years to get full productivity out of that. And it's not because the stuff wasn't ready. It was actually because you have to actually change the whole organization, or in some of these cases, the manufacturing floor, to take advantage of like electricity, right? So, so it's going to be the same here. Now, the problem we have, especially in the United States, is in 2025, there's probably about 3.5 million jobs in the United States that are going to be kind of STEM jobs. And the reality is we only graduate about 600,000, about 600,000 graduates a year in STEM, right? So you look about like India is graduating probably 2.5 million. China is, I think, something like 4.7 million. So there's a gap there. And so what do you do, right? And so you think about all these teams that used to be a scrum master and an engineer and a DBA or whatever that might have been, maybe a project manager, depends on what kind of model we're talking about. Now you're going to have a data engineer and a machine learning engineer and data scientist as part of that. So what do you do, right? Yeah, we can kind of go around, especially in these days, it might be kind of hard to bring in talent from other countries. But so you actually have to spend time training. You have to train the business people on how to leverage this stuff better. You have to train technologists and data people. And a lot of that will be internal training. So having an organization that's really focused on kind of long-term cultural change and not just kind of like, okay, I need a couple bodies to, throw a bunch of extra data scientists in and everything's going to be cured, is probably the way we need to go. And so the way I think about it is you're shifting to what's called a digital culture. And a digital culture is one that kind of has three components to it. And Tomas alluded to this, like an organization that's very like data and AI centric and leverages that. One that also kind of automates as much as possible. And then lastly, where you can't automate everything. So where you can automate, you orchestrate. And so the best example of this, or one good example of this, I like to say, is Formula One. So and I was lucky enough to go to Vegas for Formula One November, which is pretty awesome, by the way. And of course, I'm like hanging out in the Red Bull kind of like pit, who I had no idea, like I can't even pronounce his name now, Verstappen was like the guy. We're like hanging out, having lunch with him, and I guess he's like now 4-time world champion. But my daughter was very embarrassed. Anyway, but I think about Formula One. So if I think about those components, AI-driven and data-driven, you look at a Formula One race car, I mean, it's got sensors all over it. You got 5 people sitting on the track who are looking at screens that are like, look like any of these kind of like war room screens from a financial services company. And then you have another 30 people sitting in London who are looking at the same data. You then have kind of the automation piece. So I didn't realize, when you look at the steering wheel of like a Formula One car, it's got 40 buttons on it. You press a button, something happens. It's all automated kind of under the surface. And then lastly, the orchestration piece. So yeah, you can't automate a pit stop, but when you see those things taking 2 seconds, they come in, everybody's got a job, it's in and out. That's where you're orchestrating something that you can't really automate. So that's when I think about a digital culture, and I think about where we're going as organizations, fail fast or learn fast, and being able to have kind of those three components. That's what I'm thinking about. The cultural change needs to happen. So.
Well, so to me, it's the next phase of digital transformation, right? And I think we hit these areas of unknown, and we have to adopt quickly. But it is a culture. Everything comes out to the culture. I'd love to hear Thomas and Mancy's approach to the same culture shift as well. Which is fine.
Yeah, so I think we've talked a bit about culture. The only thing I would add for sure is like think about whether you need to build or you can buy your AI. And this was even true when I was still at MasterCard. I mean, we had hundreds and hundreds of data scientists, and there is good reasons on why you build your own product. But I can tell you, large organizations have a natural tendency to want to build their own, and because of all the talent constraints, in many cases, you're actually better off buying, at least buy and then somewhat customize versus just trying to do all of this yourself. Like you're going to go much faster. The vast majority of the things that people are doing today are very much things that everybody else is trying to. And so as soon as you're like, hey, this sounds like a problem that everybody else has, you probably should be thinking about, should I buy this to overcome the talent gap much faster than otherwise? And then look, on the culture side, this will take time. The way I always think about it is like every generation of new students coming into the workforce will just like they'll have all these skills. Like even if you go to a university campus now, they know much better than most how to use ChatGPT or anything else to get their term papers in, as much as that may be frowned upon. And so like the only suggestion I may have is like just maybe focus a little more on early career hiring, because it'll help you drive that culture forward a little bit more quickly as you get this right. But it'll take time. Like culture is not easy.
Yeah, I have a 14-year-old son, and it was funny. I was driving him to school in the morning, and he had some math worksheet, and I'm looking at him. He's taking a picture of a pretty complex kind of problem, and AI scans it. Computer vision gives him the answer, like a nice detailed proof. I'm like, come on, man. So I'm like, you shouldn't be doing that. But I was impressed by the AI of it. But obviously, made sure he's doing his homework himself at this point.
Yeah, just to add on to that, so my son, who's 10, he built his own computer, totally on his own, other than verifying with ChatGPT whether he's buying the correct parts and are they within the budget that he has made up. And he built it all in himself, and I was really proud about that. But I think these tools can do so much more that you can realize. Like now you can write books, you can, even if you're not a writer, even if you're not a speaker, you can speak. I think it kind of enables you to be a lot more creative than you would have been before. And I think when you think about culture shift, I think it's the baseline of what were you not able to do before that you can now because of this AI movement. And getting people to think with that mindset is really the way where the culture needs to be. And as Thomas said, it is going to take time. I also do want to bring up one point is about whether in this instance, it's not necessarily the best idea to be the first mover, as we've seen, right? Like when you say buy versus build, do you actually want to be the first mover? Maybe it's better to wait and see, be not the very first, but be not the last, because you may build something and it may be obsolete in 6 months. So I think we have to be more mindful about how we come up with our AI strategy.
That we have so little time left and so much more to do. I mean, I would love to unpack, and maybe we could do this quickly, the concept between AI steadiness, AI accelerated, and what's best for an organization. And John, I'd like you to at least weigh in on that. But I still have so many questions for us before we're going to have to come back to part 2. But John, from your perspective, can you unpack those two concepts for us?
Yeah, and I know Monty brought it up before, and clearly I need to hire her son to tutor my son, but we'll figure it out offline. But yeah, listen, I think that's it. I think you have to understand kind of either the type of company you work for or the type of company you're representing or selling into. I think there are these types of companies that are AI accelerated or AI steady. And so, there's a lot of organizations that are more, have more modest ambitions. And to Tomas's point, it's like, it's really all about the outcomes. So if you're in an organization that doesn't really require, to be front lines, and so, coming from a place like JP, which you think about books like Flash Boys, they were moving data centers to be right next to, right next to exchanges, so they can get like squeak out like nanoseconds. I mean, there are companies that have been doing, like JP's been doing predictive analytics forever, right? So not everybody's like that. So it's like, how do you actually think about, okay, what are the revenue opportunities? What are the cost saving opportunities? What are the opportunities to better manage risk in a much more measured way? And that's okay. I mean, that's, as long as you have as part of your strategy, that's what it is. And then you think about these AI accelerated companies where it really is, they're ambitious. You're in like, industries like finance and healthcare and stuff where, speed is really a differentiator. So the first to get kind of a product to market for a specific kind of like, cure, great, big difference. Same with like maybe a different financial product, or being able to outperform kind of, or do like faster risk ratings for different evaluations for different investments. It's a big differentiator. So when I left JP Morgan Chase in 2000, so a couple years ago now, I can do that math, 2023. I mean, we had about $500 million we were investing in AI at that point. We had about 900 data scientists. We had about 600 plus, machine learning engineers, and about 200 AI researchers. So they were all in. And then when I joined kind of Guardian Life, which, great company, they had a strong foundation of kind of like data science underneath. But, we really stood up kind of, a little bit this Ferrari in the AI factory in about 6 months. And we had about 100 use cases, which were about $200 million in benefit over 3 years, identified pretty quickly. And what you started to see like, whereas some people really wanted to go after the, some of the revenue opportunities pretty quickly, you saw that in a more AI steady state, it was, it's probably easier or less risky for us to go after some of the cost savings opportunities. And so in those cases, you kind of follow the money. You work with the CFO and say, okay, where are we spending the money? Where are the people? Not that you're necessarily going to get rid of the people, but more how do you actually help them with their jobs on a day-to-day basis? So that tends to be a little bit more of the focus. So just be explicit about what you're expecting to get out of AI. But back to Tomas's point, it's really about the outcomes and what type of company you are.
So I want to save enough time, and I want to wrap this up because AI is here and it's now, and agentic AI is really taking over where we're going, and we have A to A coming, hitting us hard. So Tomas, if you don't mind, we're looking at a future of AI. Can you, first of all, Tomas, if people want to find you, how can people get in touch with you?
I think you can just find my LinkedIn profile. It should just be searchable on the name that's on the screen now. So that should be easy enough for folks if they want to find me.
So if you can give us a takeaway or two of what you can give other leaders that are starting their AI journey.
Yeah, I think what I would say is 2 or 3 things. One, definitely like show that it works, because there's a lot of skepticism, and frankly, there's a lot of good reasons to be very skeptical also. There is places where I've seen AI being used where I'm just like, why? Like, could we not just redesign this process? Like, it's totally fine. No need for fancy computers. And so as much as you need to like be skeptical and remain skeptical, I think getting a few wins on the board, and there's great simple things you can roll out in an organization, like whether it's ChatGPT or some version of Copilot from Microsoft, or Claude, or whatever, or Gemini from the Google folks. Like, just give people a feel for like, hey, if I use this versus my regular workflow, like that's kind of step one. And what I would encourage folks is try and find the aha moment where you dramatically accelerated 1 or 2 simple things. And like that's when people suddenly like, oh, this is helpful. And that aha is really, really the unlock, I think. Number 2, really, like it goes back to what John was saying, we've been talking about, is like you need a framework and you need to be like comprehensive in your thinking. You can't just go, hey, I'm going to just focus on the data science and we'll figure out the other stuff. You can't just be like, hey, I'm going to focus on making sure we get data right and then you don't get the value. You can't just focus on the intake and not get the execution right. Like that whole 8-box framework is really important. You need to get all 8 pieces in some shape or form. You can be more mature in one and less mature in others, but like you need all 8. There's no debating that, I think. So make sure you get that right. And the third for me, which is, as I said, why I'm so excited about this space, is like this very much feels like a very generational shift in technology. Like I think our relationship with time will change. And so just think about how fundamental that is, right? Like what used to take weeks, we can now in some cases do in minutes. And the number of use cases that we can do that with is very tiny today. But if you can figure out a way to get from like 10 good use cases to 100 good use cases in the next year and then to 1,000 good use cases in the next decade, suddenly what used to take months and years, we can do it in a day. Like as like people working together trying to get stuff done, which is just fabulous. And so that's why I think it's just like take the long view on this, because as much as there's ups and downs and plenty of noise around us, like the long view is that this is going to be like quite dramatic in terms of how it's going to help us.
We've had some good percentage coming up here too, and I think we're all feeling the same answer. So Thomas, thank you. So Manzi, I'd like to ask you the same question. What advice do you give other leaders starting their AI journeys? Especially, I know you're doing some great things with it too.
Yeah, look, I think if you're just beginning your AI transformation journey, my advice is start simple, right? Start small, but think big and pack snacks. And I say that because this is a marathon, it's not a sprint. And honestly, the hardest part isn't the AI, it's the humans, like we all spoke about. I think everyone wants to build a chatbot, but like Thomas said, if your data is a mess and your teams are not aligned, your AI really will be more artificial than it will be intelligent. So fix that data. And I think instead of going after a lot of use cases, I would say choose one real business problem that people actually care about and then solve it with the AI playing a supporting role. The AI does not have to be the star, right? That visible early win really builds trust and momentum. And I think that's important. I do think transformation is not just one big giant leap. It's 1,000 small nudges. So lead with curiosity, not certainty. Celebrate progress, not perfection. Because at the end of the day, AI is just potential. It's leadership that turns this potential into progress. And I think that's important to bear in mind.
And Manzi, where can everybody find you?
So same as Tomas, look me up on LinkedIn. My name, just as it is appearing here.
And the links will be posted tomorrow on the when the Institute of the Transformation posts.
By the way, I love the. I've heard many times, start small, think big, start small, which is totally the right way. I've never heard the pack snacks, which I love. As spoken as a parent, makes sense. A lot of things are marathons, not sprints, right?
So John, I'm not going to let you off so easily today before we close you out. Today's the celebration of you, but how can we find you besides the #1 Amazon bestseller?
Yeah, I mean, that's easy, right? So the same thing. Find me on LinkedIn. You can go to missionlabs.ai. I kind of, to be honest, I threw up that site in like a day. So there's a new, much prettier version coming out in the next couple of weeks. So, but it has a lot of information you kind of need. But yeah, no, listen, I appreciate everybody kind of joining. I appreciate all the kind of words about the book, and there's never enough time to kind of go deep. And I'm happy to go deep on a lot of these topics individually with people. We might have some time for questions now. I think from my perspective, as we kind of, start to wrap up, I think one of the things that we didn't cover, and Tomas and Manzi covered a lot, is reality is this is a team sport. And so even whether you start small and you definitely focus on stuff that's good outcomes, you might use partners, all these kind of different topics, you got to include a bunch of people. You got to include risk, legal, HR compliance, communications. So the fact that this is a cultural change, they are going to be part of the conversation, even if it's kind of one use case. But what I would say is, and I was at Gartner's CIO conference at the end of last year, and it was actually something that we were in Disney. And ironically, Jensen Huang from NVIDIA had said it. He didn't actually equate it to Walt Disney, but it is a Walt Disney quote. And it's, the way to get started is to quit talking and begin doing. And I think that's what it is. And so it's like, do something, whether it's Copilot, whether it's, you don't want to just go out there and again, chase the shiny object, but start working with it. Because then you'll learn and go, oh, wow, like I got to worry about where's the data sourced, what large language models are they using? Okay, what's the security around it, all those different pieces. And the best way to do anything is to learn anything is to do. And that's the same for even individual business people, right? Like go out there, try and build a a deep fake of your boss. Go like make a song using like LLMs. Go use ChatGPT. Go use Copilot. As individuals, once you start to play with this stuff, you'll be like, oh wow, I should be incorporating this to my day to day. So get out there and start doing.
So then let me ask you to leave us with this, Ron. So what are some of the biggest trends that you're seeing, or what should some companies be preparing for next?
I mean, yeah, there's a lot of different stuff. You can go pretty deep on this. I mean, I'm big into quantum. I wouldn't say I'd like, I can talk to you about what post-quantum cryptography is and quantum key distribution, which makes me kind of sound smart to some people, but a lot of people know what it is by now. I think the agentic AI, you're going to have AGI coming out soon, which is kind of like general intelligence, augmented general intelligence. I think that coming in like 5 years. There's things like confidential compute, which is how do you think about the data that you're actually sharing between people? How do you actually, build models and stuff leveraging confidential data without people seeing the actual data? But the biggest thing I think that's most relevant we talked about is agentic AI. I think when you think about the way we interact with technology overall, it's going to change. Right now, we actively go out and we actually seek and we go to websites and we search for different stuff like, okay, I need more toothpaste. Whereas in the future, you're going to have these agents coming to you much more proactively. And you might not even have an interface of like a web. It'd be the interface you prefer, whether it's your email or whether it's like voice. And so, I had my Alexa, I said her name, so I stopped.
Everyone's numbers going up.
Whatever it is. So she said to me the other day, hey, like, I noticed you buy a lot of bubble gum. Like there's a 20% discount on bubble gum. Like, would you like me to sell you some? So I think that's going to be our future, where a lot of this is going to change and it's going to be agentic. And I think the person, whoever kind of predicts that like retail kind of personal assistant agent is going to be kind of killing it, because that's going to be something that sits alongside us all day long. We have some of these tools, like I can't say their name, Siri or other stuff, that you can do some of that, but that's going to be really supercharged, I think, in the next few years. And so you're going to move away from these kind of like business or B2C culture or B2B culture, business to business, business to consumer, to really like business to agent or consumer to agent or agent to agent. You're going to really start seeing the whole industry and the way we interact with a lot of stuff change over the next 5 to 10 years. So,
well, I want to thank everybody for being here, John. I want to thank you for the book. It was a great read. I read it not enough times. You know how many times I read it. So,
appreciate it.
But thank you, everybody. Thank you for joining us. The questions, the audience, the time, the future people are going to read this. John, I truly appreciate your insight and the information. And I wanted to call it AI for Dummies, but it's really a book, I think, for the ages. So I appreciate it. Looking forward to the second book. Hopefully you're working on it already. Thanks everyone for watching. Looking forward to the next Leading the Digital Era coming out next month. And I appreciate everybody's time. Thank you very much.
Thanks for having us, Rob. Thanks, Mansi. Thanks, Tomas.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining Leading in the Digital Era, presented by the Institute for Digital Transformation and hosted by Robert Field. Look for new episodes coming to a LinkedIn live session at noon on the second Tuesday of every month. Can't join Robert for the live session? You can catch the replay anytime on our YouTube channel.